is Rory Connor. I was a De La Salle brother many years ago. One thing I noticed about Murray's speech was the use of the words like survivors and revelations. Just assume that all cases are true, that all allegations are true. Now, how should bishops react? How should bishops treat cases when they know or strongly suspect the allegation is false? How should bishops react when politicians tell lies about abuse? Now, I'm not going to say any names, but in 1994, the government fell because a politician told lies about a Catholic Attorney General and the Cardinal Archbishop of Armagh. In 2009, a politician demanded and got a year-long inquiry into claims that the Catholic Church had been involved in the murder of a 10-year-old girl in 1970. So after a year, the Gardaí told the then Minister for Justice that the allegation, there was no evidence to prove it.
Okay.
And finally, we've had two prominent politicians, I will use one name here, not about them. They used Dáil privilege to libel Nora Wall. Nora Wall got a libel award.
I know the case.
From the Sunday World.
Yeah.
Two politicians used Dáil privilege to repeat the libel.
Right.
I mean,
I think we get your point, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
Now we'll give Marie a chance to respond.
First of all, I would like to say that the people who are the most angry, most upset about false allegations are survivors. And what angers me most is when I hear people, sometimes within the church, refer in a very negative and scathing way about victims making false allegations. If someone is making a false allegation, they are not a victim and should not be bundled in with victims or survivors. They have nothing to do with victims and survivors. They're riding on the backs of victims and survivors. So there's no way I have any time whatsoever for a false allegation. And I think anyone who is found to make a false allegation, the entire rigour of the law should come down on top of them, because it undermines the credibility of real victims. So I'm with any procedure that is put in place to deal with false allegations. That being said, I don't believe they are as numerous. Proper studies have shown that false allegations are actually very rare, even church studies themselves. I know the Norla Wall case is very high profile, as with the Reynolds case and the missionaries. Those cases were appalling and should never have happened. And as far as politicians lying, I have no time for anyone who lies. And we should have no time for anyone who lies, whether they're bishop, politician, tinker, tailor, soldier, spy. It makes no difference. I don't think the bishops can do anything other than if someone has lied and it's been known to be it's a lie, to condemn the lie. I mean, it's all you can do. I don't know quite what you want me to say other than it's wrong. And
but you didn't mention it at all, and it has to affect the way the code that the bishops draw has to include the possibility of false allegations.
Yes, of course it does.
You didn't mention it. You're mentioning it now, fine, I agree.
But what did you want me to mention? You want me to mention something that is nothing to do. What I said was you have to have proper safeguarding policies. Within proper safeguarding policies, there are many measures, including measures against false allegations. Now, I didn't go through all the different points in a proper safeguarding policy. I didn't mention any of the others, so why would I mention the false allegations?
Thank you.
So it's definitely something. It should not stop any bishop from properly protecting children from real perpetrators, and anyone that denies that perpetrators are not out there abusing children and saying it's all false allegations are doing the church no favours.
Thank you. We need to move on to another question. Gentleman here. If you just give your name and just a question.
Yeah, okay. My name is Pat Cahill, and I was very interested in your talk with the Pope himself and your sojourn in the Vatican as long as it was, that you didn't seem to have any hope. And looking at what happened with in the question of the Pope, this crowd called the CDF,
CDF,
the Curia, seemed to put the damper on any kind of reform that could be made and so on. And given the fact of all the scandals, and you didn't even mention the scandal of the Vatican Bank and so on, carrying on that they are going on, but just on the news tonight, coming in, I heard the what do you call it, the fountain that people throw money in, millions, and the Catholic Church want that money, they wouldn't give it because of the fact the local county council are looking for it to do up the place. The church has, no, that's ours. They seem to be more interested in power and money. So given the fact, and I have 4 children who went through Catholic schools and so on, they don't go near anything now, and I think that that is the big thing, the Catholic Church has lost. They have just walked away. It's as simple as that. And I'm very pessimistic. I think unless they just close up the thing and turn it into some kind of museum and have a real, I don't know, it just has to be a revolution to bring people back again.
That has to come from the laity, I believe, because of, there are so many good people in the church, but within the clergy, but the laity really have to drive this. I went into that commission very hopeful. It had 16 experts on abuse from every different perspective, clerical and lay. And I believe we did some very good work. We produced some very good documents. We produced very good recommendations. One was a template for writing child safeguarding policies. The idea was that it would be sent to each bishop's conference around the world, and they would base their policies that they would draw up on what was in this template. In other words, including all the basic best practices. They could then add their own stamp to it. And again, the CDF would not circulate it, despite the Pope approving it. So when you get to that point, where the Pope brings you in to advise him, you give him advice and he accepts it. And then his civil service says we won't implement it. What is the point of that commission? I resigned after 3 years because I thought it was pointless. We were working very hard. We had very good brains there and experts working very hard. We recommended changes in canon law. There was a lot of recommendations. And the Pope, in fact, was very good. He was very, very good. He got it. He understood why the recommendations were being put there, and he approved them. My problem was he did not follow up and ensure that they were implemented. And then, with the delay in time, he was convinced by the people who had prevented it from happening. He was obviously convinced by them to come over to their way of thinking. It's the way things work in the Vatican. There are pro-Francis factions, there are anti-Francis factions. There are people who are in favour at one time and another group is in favour at another time. And there's so much politics that real issues get lost. And that's what's so depressing. If they put their mind to it and really worked at it, but because it's such a hothouse and so much effort goes into the sort of politics of position and knowledge. Knowledge is power, and each department wants the power, and it won't give the knowledge to the other department, which totally cuts down on any sort of efficiency or achieving anything, and the bureaucracy is appalling. I'm not being negative for the sake of being negative. I wanted to be positive because I wanted to see things happening, but we worked there for 3 years and nothing came out of it. The guideline template that we developed to help the bishops around the world write their policies is sitting on a website where they can look at it if they want to, but it has never been actually given to them and they haven't been told, this is a good idea, use this. Because I think the Commission wrote it and not a Vatican department, and it would make them look bad. And that's the sort of thinking, which is totally counterproductive when you want to get something done. And I hate to be so negative, but it is the truth, and you can't get away from the truth. And even if the truth is an unpleasant truth, the only way we can tackle it is accept it's the truth and work to change it.
Right. Okay, thank you. Phil.
Phil Dunn.
Hi.
Thank you, Murray, and thank you for your constant work, the work that has gone back so far. Thank you. You are a beacon. You've talked about the Pope, you've talked about bishops, you've talked about the CDF. All men.
Absolutely.
Do you really think there will be any change if we are waiting for entirely male groups to do it? I don't.
No, I mean, I think I probably, because it's impossible to get into one talk, all the things I would like to have said, and I maybe just said something briefly at the end there, that obviously there's an absolute necessity to women to be properly involved at the higher levels of the church. The Vatican will say, oh, we have women here and we have women there. But if you look closely at them, they tend to be very clericalized women. They're really not someone from the general population in the local parish. They're very clericalized and very much at one with the male colleagues, and they are not going to rock any boats or challenge anything. Actually, if you look at the commission that I've just been speaking about, the first term ended not that long ago. And the most challenging and the most strongly engaged members of that commission were all women. And guess what? They weren't reappointed. Instead, to keep the male-female balance up, they brought on more religious sisters. I have nothing against religious sisters, but they're less likely to be challenging because they tend to, just by fact of being within the church, of being more part of the institution, and many are very strong women, but in this context, it was done very quietly, but the most, I would say the most skilled and experienced members of the commission were allowed go because they were the women, and they were found by the clerics we were working with, I know because I would have been included in this, as difficult.
That's in other words, you're getting places.
Yes, and I think that what we need in the church is more difficult women.
Okay, one more. Yeah.
Well, I will just, before I thank you at all, Mary, I just want to let you know I am a woman religious. My name is Cora, Sister Cora. And I can tell you I'm a very difficult woman.
Oh, for you! More power to you.
My question is simple. I cannot understand, and maybe you can help me. And thank you, by the way. I agree with everything Phil said. You're wonderful.
Thank you very much. I don't need that answer.
Mary, I can't understand why the law of the country doesn't take over. I can't understand that a bishop can say that child is that child has been abused, but I mean the Catholic Church doesn't allow the church to be taken into account. I can't understand that. Could you explain that?
I think what has happened, and we saw it here in Ireland, in so many countries, was the local authorities, social, police, etc. They were very loath to get involved in anything to do with the church. They tended. An example here would have been my own case. Photographs were taken of me as part of my abuse, which were indecent photographs, and the priest sent them to England to be processed. And the laboratories in England, and this is many, many years ago, obviously, the laboratories in England sent them to the police here because they saw them to be very abusive and criminal. And what the police here did, the commissioner took them up to Drumcondra and gave them to Archbishop McQuaid to deal with, and did no more. Now, the priest had committed a crime. Even in those days it was a crime. But the police weren't going to get involved. It was the church could deal with it. Now, how the church dealt with it was to suspend him for a month and then put him in another parish, and he went on abusing children for the next 30 years. But that's the way it happened. But I think there was this reluctance, and the church almost relied on that in many ways. That a priest was above, or a religious was above, being held to the same standard as the man next door, the butcher or the baker or whatever. And that's for historical reasons. But in recent times, things have changed dramatically. If you look in Australia, we have a cardinal being found guilty of abuse by a criminal court. In France, we have another cardinal who is being tried for protecting an abuser. It's happening in Chile. It's there in America. The local authorities, the district attorneys, are going in and raiding bishops' offices. So that sort of protection, that aura of invulnerability is going, and I think the church doesn't realise that. And the way they should handle it is to come out and open the doors and admit we made a mess of all this, we did all the wrong things for reasons of ignorance, for reasons of lack of knowledge, because we thought we were doing the right thing, because we didn't understand abuse, whatever. Just come out and say we got it totally wrong and now we want to get it right, and allow the authorities to do their jobs. But I think it's something the church is going to have to deal with more and more, and that is the hands-off attitude of local authorities and police, etc., is quickly changing. And you see that in some countries, in Australia now, where they want to do away with protection of confession and things like that. So it's going very far, and the church is finding itself very much in the back foot. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's the best I can do. And I love a strong religious. I didn't mean in my comments earlier about religious not being strong, but I know the individuals have been appointed, and it's not quite the same thing.
Great. Okay. Another question. Oh. Colin, Jackie.
Mary, thank you for a very frank talk. It's good to hear a lot of the things you said. And I'm going to ask you a question which is naive, but it's not until out of the format, and it's basically this. Why doesn't Pope Francis take on Mueller?
He took him on, but he removed him from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And Mueller is making a great noise at the moment, saying that people in the Vatican are lying to the Pope about him, and that this is the way things work in the Vatican, and you can't defend yourself from these gossips who spread malicious rumours about you. The problem is that's how things work in the Vatican. If you want to bring somebody down, you just spread malicious rumours about them. But Mueller has basically gone. He's been replaced. But I mean, we have bishops in America, cardinals in America, bishops in America. There's a very, very strong anti-Francis movement there, and they're trying very hard to bring Francis down. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have the answers. Francis is in a very difficult position. He is very popular on one side, and he is absolutely disliked on the other side. And he's trying to reform things within the Vatican, and all those reforms are just moving through treacle, you know. I think the attitude of many there who are on the anti-Francis side is, if we just wait long enough, we'll have a new man, and we can go back to the way we were.
Thank you.
Colin, Jackie is just in front of you. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Jackie. Sorry. I'll be very brief. In your talk, I think there seems to be a focus on clerical sex abuse. Now, the vast majority of Catholics, well over 90%, are lay people, and even in absolute terms, there's probably an awful lot more sexual abuse among that 97% than there would be among clerics. And I'm wondering, to what extent can the Church give leadership in that regard? It has been through so much, it's got so much experience and so on, and yet it could do so much to perhaps to give leadership in that regard.
I think one specific about the clerical abuse, I was probably talking about that more because of this summit that's coming up, and it's very much about diocesan clergy, because we know it's also occurred in religious. But the majority of abuse is familial, it's in society, it's in sports clubs, teaching, scouts. We know it's everywhere. Sadly, you know, the statistic here in Ireland is 1 in 4 people have been abused as a child. In America, it's 1 in 5, and in India, and this is a true statistic, it's 1 in 2. The church, and I was trying to say there, if the church got their act together and really worked at it, they could bring all their knowledge on this issue to bear. You know, all the countries in which they have a presence. And we know the size of the Catholic Church, the spread it has over the world. It could flip this whole thing over and actually bring progress to the places where abuse is rife and endemic. If they could look at it from that positive point of view, all the experts they now have within the church, if they could bring all that to bear within society, where it's needed, they could be a huge positive force for good. But they, in my view, and I might be totally wrong about everything, I can only say it as I see it, my view is the church has got itself so wrapped up in self-defense and minimizing things and trying to hope it'll all go away, and it won't. Again, in the Vatican there is this attitude that if we stop talking about it, it'll go away, which is just ludicrous. But some do believe it. If the church could get its act together and really bring together all its expertise and put into practice all the measures it has been advised it should, it could then disseminate them out into the local communities and spread the learning and spread the education and protect children worldwide. I'd love to see it happen, but I think they have to get their own house in order first.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. We're running out of time now, Jackie. Yeah.
Just very briefly, Jackie Nelson. Like everybody else, Mary, I think you are an absolute inspiration. My question is, you mentioned patience, perseverance, and you said that the church reacts to outrage among the laity. Have you any suggestions as to how we in We Are Church could bring that outrage, that patience and that perseverance into putting pressure on the church in general and the Vatican in particular?
Oh, I wish I had the answers. I don't. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I know what doesn't work. Walking up and down with placards and things, that sort of thing they pay no attention. They're not interested, and they can write you off. It's certainly, if you can show that you have knowledge and facts and are well informed, and that all backs up what you're saying, they find it very difficult to contend with people who are well informed and know what they're talking about, because it's very difficult to counter a good argument or a good proposal. If you try any other way, it's very easy to be dismissed. I think the big strength of something like We Are Church is that you cannot be dismissed as outsiders trying to damage the church. You are within the church, and that has a huge amount of strength in it. But as to how you actually go about it, specifically, I don't know. I think it just have to not let things pass. When you see the church doing things that are counter to what they've said they're going to do, draw attention to it, call them out on it, challenge them on it, because they've done that too much. They've promised a lot, or they've said they'll do something, and then the actions are different. As with, and I won't take up much more time, I didn't get time to say it there, but the Pope has said he's going to have zero tolerance, and zero tolerance basically means if a priest is found to have abused a child, he will be removed from the clerical state. And they didn't set up the tribunal to hold bishops accountable in 2015, but in the Vatican what they did set up was a panel to review cases where priests had been found guilty of abuse, where they could appeal their sentence. And in the last 3 years, quite a number of priests who have been found guilty by a canon law trial in a local area have appealed to this panel in the Vatican. And these are priests who have been removed from the clerical state, who have been laicized. And they've appealed to now found guilty of abusing a child, badly enough to have been removed. And this panel, who are mostly made up of bishops and cardinals, this panel has rescinded this sentence and replaced it with 3 years or 5 years suspensions. And they will then be returned to ministry. Now, you can't say on one side, have the Pope saying, we will have zero tolerance in the church. And then you have a Vatican panel basically giving a slap on the wrist to a cleric who has been found guilty of abuse and saying, oh, no, we're not going to remove you from the clerical state. We'll suspend you for a couple of years and then you can come back in and be a priest again. And one is totally contrary to the other. And for people looking from the outside, what are they supposed to believe? What are they supposed to believe is going on? Because it just doesn't match up. And it's that sort of thing. If you see that, that should be something that shouldn't go unnoticed. Attention should be drawn to it and saying, why on one hand are we getting promises of zero tolerance, and on the other hand getting this sort of thing within the Vatican? The left hand doesn't seem to know what the right hand is doing, and they need to be called out on it so that they can think before they do things, and that they talk to each other about what they're doing. And I don't mean to concentrate so much on zero tolerance. It's just a good example, you know. But what you can do, as I say, be well informed, know your facts, and speak out when it's necessary, and keep everything you say reasonable. And I found the one thing that is easy to ignore is sort of, and you never do it, I don't think we in church, we know, angry rants. They can just be written off as angry people. You need to be at the force saying that you want to see the church a church you can be proud of. And that's what you're working towards. It's very hard to dismiss that. But that's the best. I don't know. I wish I did have the answer.
Thank you so much, Mary. And now